Hey, Adam.
Yo.
What is the title for today's episode?
You got me.
Yeah,
you really got me.
We don't know. This is unusual for us, right?
It's yeah, I do know.
What?
It's written at the bottom of, like, when they look at their phones, they're going to see what the title is.
They look at their phone
right
like
there. Yeah. Well, I need glasses. Or if they're watching on YouTube, it's going to be right there.
What about on MTV?
No, this won't make it on MTV.
Okay.
Pete, I'll be honest. Guy's obsessed with MTV right now.
I want my MTV.
It really does. I'm Adam Manis.
And I'm Peter Martin.
And you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
Music Explored.
Explored coming to you today, brought to you by Open Studio. Go to openstudiojazz.com for all your jazz lesson needs. Peter.
Yes.
What are we doing today?
Well, we are going to go to the endless well that we call SpeakPipe. We're going to take a listener question today, and we remind folks we got a little depressed this morning. Not going to lie, because we went to SpeakPipe and saw that we've got so many messages that we haven't answered yet. But we haven't had any in over a month. And I asked you, I was like, what's going on? Is there something that's broken down with this? Oh, maybe I should just refresh the page. Maybe
you should refresh the page first and foremost, for sure.
No, but we haven't got one. And you said very astutely, very wisely, that we haven't mentioned this. So this is serving notice that we accept questions.
You know, once we finally answered Pickin' Stone's rhythmic SpeakPipe several months ago, I feel like we needed to like accomplish something with SpeakPipe, and so we took a little bit of a break, but we're back. I love a SpeakPipe. If you don't know, a SpeakPipe is where you can leave us a voicemail. You can go to you'llhearit.com and you can ask us a question.
We make it so much more complicated than we need to. But
no, they just go to you'llhearit.com. It's the name of the show, Peter, and that is written right there on their iPod.
And so, we're going to take a question, and this is one from one of our friends, actually, friend of the show, friend of the pod, friend of Open Studio,
absolutely,
OG Open Studio Pro member, Jan. And should we just take a gander?
I think gander means look, but let's have a listen.
Really?
Let's take a gonger?
A gonger. Here we go.
Hey there, it's Jan from the Lake District in the UK.
I want to be in the Lake District
Open
right
Studio Pro veteran and longtime fan of the pod. So I had a question about songs that make you feel emotional. I was driving yesterday. I was listening to Oscar Peterson, We Get Requests. I had to skip You Look Good to Me right as it started, because I know that every time it comes on, I always end up in like a big soppy mess. And I was like, no, I'm on the motorway. I can't do that. I'm going to have to skip it, even though I love it. There's some other songs that do that to me as well. Samara Joy, Guess Who I Saw Today, has me in floods of tears. So I guess I have two questions. What are some songs that make you respond emotionally? Because always looking out for new music to listen to. And also, as a player, what is it do you think those songs have that make them emotional? Is it really personal, or is there something objectively sad or emotional about those songs? How do they work? I'd be really interested to have your thoughts on that. Thanks, guys.
Great question, Jan.
Yeah.
Hey there.
Oh, she was back. Sorry.
She's back. Great question. Maybe we can
basically explain music and why it works so well.
Well, this is what's so great about music, though, in general, is that it is sort of mysterious. Why do these vibrations that we move through the air make us sad or happy or angry or joyful or melancholy or any number of emotions? Like, why do we hit emotions with sound? More so than you do, I would say, with even other senses. You know what I mean? There's something about it that's just somewhat deeper sound.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think maybe, Peter, let's start with hearing a bit. And Jan, not to make you cry, but let's hear a little bit of You Look Good to Me from the Oscar Peterson trio, We Get Requests. This is the track that Jan was mentioning. She
Cover your ears, Jan, in case you don't want to stop. emotion that I'm feeling, like once I get away from kind of what the chords are and stuff, is just like, I mean, not to be reductive too much, but it's just joy, optimism, sunlight, you know, optimism.
Well, but there's not. I think I know. I don't know what's going on with Jan, but I know what's going on with me, and there's a lot of combinations of things happening. I think it starts with the chord progression, and then it ends in their arrangement and the production, right? So the chord progression is primarily around this descending pattern, C major to G over B. This is important, this G over B chord.
Super important.
It's because this is the hope, right? Now, and this could be like what you're expecting after this, because you're going down here diatonically, is like an A minor, right?
Right. You're staying around the same kind of home base in general.
But what happens after this G major is this. It's like a G minor over B flat.
Right.
This is where it gets melancholy. This is a story.
This is a story.
This is a story.
Chord changes.
You're expecting this, which is, it's a minor chord, but it's in the key of C.
Yep.
It's not as sad or as like unexpectedly like, oh, we're not going to make it.
Right.
As this, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, A dominant 7, not A minor.
And that's important too, because it could be like, so.
Right.
That would bring you back. Oh, cool. We're going to the 4, maybe back to the 1.
But this dominant 7 is also yearning to go somewhere. And where it's yearning to go, first and foremost, is this. The D minor 7. But it doesn't go there, does it? It goes to F minor 6 over A flat. Which again is a heart-wrenching chord of like, oh, we're not going to make it.
Maybe, okay.
And then it finally lands on that G7 or that C over G. And that, I think, is part of it. And then coupled with the fact that it's like, it's soft, it's brushes, they never get too big. Oscar's playing way up, like way up in the...
Very light.
High soprano range, very lightly.
Starts with the bass solo, maybe that's why.
It starts with a killing bass solo. I think there's a lot going on there. I think a lot of that has to do with it. The guests who I saw, and actually let's just skip to the end of this, because I think they go back. Yeah, hear this transition. And the fact too, this just cycles.
And they're sitting on the chords for a while. It doesn't seem like at the beginning, but once they start swinging out, it's like 2 whole bars on every chord, and there's the symmetry.
Yeah.
And this is very like lullaby-ish, childish.
Yeah, they've manipulated
Childish
you, Jan.
Gambino.
They've manipulated your emotions.
Yeah.
And then the guest who I saw today, so the Samara Joy version, the Nancy Wilson version is the classic version, but this is also
I haven't
great.
heard Samara's.
And this is all about the lyrics. This is a story. I think this is Matt Dennis.
Getting home from
Could be wrong
the
about that.
Did you miss your train? Were you caught in the rain? No, don't bother to explain. Can I fix you a quick martini?
Murray Grand.
As a matter of fact, I'll have one with you.
I said Matt Dennis because Matt Dennis has a lot of punchlines, a lot of setups,
setup
in the lyrics.
boom.
I've had
clever,
quite
and this
a
has that as well.
Yeah.
But to me, this is all about the story of the song.
Absolutely.
Guess who I saw today, my dear? I went in town to shop around for something new.
Samara Joy, unbelievable.
I thought I'd stop and grab a bite when I was through.
Have vibrato.
Yeah.
Woo.
You know this tune?
I
No.
looked around.
I mean, I've heard it. I've never
for
played it.
someplace new.
Heard Nancy.
Then it occurred to me where I had parked the car. There was a most attractive French cafe and bar. It really wasn't very far. showed me to a dark, secluded corner. And as my eyes became accustomed to the gloom, I saw two people at the bar who were so much in love that even I could spot it clear across the room. Guess who I saw today, my dear? I'd never been so shocked before. I headed blindly through the door. They didn't see me passing through. Guess who I saw today? Guess who I saw today? Guess who I saw today? I saw you.
What a voice.
Yeah.
What a storyteller, too. And the song itself is just heart-wrenching. She's singing to you, and it ends up being this,
Yeah, and I think that there's
accusatory.
It's so great. I think there's an added element, like if you know, like Jam probably does, and like there's an additional emotional pull to something like this when you have a young or relatively young artist singing this. Like he gives you that hope that, like, yes, this music is alive, it's relevant, it's not just like, that's not, to me, is not a throwback. I know to some people, young people, I think it's great when they're like, oh, this is like in the olden days in old Hollywood movie or going to a jazz club. There's different nostalgia or perception of nostalgia. But I think that what you have, it's very exciting to hear an older or middle-aged, vocalists sing the same song. Like, what do they bring to the party?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not trying to like jump into another era, but just trying to be like, this is 2024, whenever this was recorded, I guess a couple of years ago. But this is relevant today, just as is. There's something very hopeful about that. It's not like, which
Come
we
on
could have
now.
done. We could have gone there. But I bet you don't have to do that just to make it something else. Like you can just sing the song, a great song with a great vocalist like Samara is, and really when the artistry is at that level. It's like an incredible picture. Like you can talk about like the, Bob Gibson. I mean, we're in St. Louis, so I'm thinking Bob Gibson, all these different, pictures from the past. But if you see a young kid come in and throw a perfect game, that's fun. You know what I mean?
Fun.
It's still the MLB. It's still like everything is kind of the same. And there's a certain feeling of like joy in knowing that like the world keeps going around, the earth keeps going around the sun. What is the sun? Yeah, we go around the sun.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that still happening? We don't know, especially in the way the world is now.
Yeah.
Like when shit is changing
We
fast.
do know, but yeah.
Well, we know that there's instability, right? I mean, there's always instability, but we know there's, for a lot of people in the world, there's more, as it's gonna, the storm clouds are coming. You're like, we got to know that. And so when you hear, it's great to put on Nancy Wilson, and of course we do that too, but it's also great to put on a young artist that's not like, oh, I got to do it different or whatever. It's like, no,
She does it a lot like Nancy.
Exactly, but she's Samara's top shelf vocals. Top shelf instrument.
Unbelievable.
Top shelf artist. So like that's what she brings to the party.
Yeah, production's great, choices are great, songs great. Yeah, why music though, Peter? What is it about it? Like to me, it is. I know this sounds like maybe simple, but the idea of setting up expectations and then in sort of clever ways of defying them or satisfying them, right? So like that's our job, is to set up your expectations and then defy them or satisfy them in a way that is interesting to you. And really all art should have some kind of part on that. We can comment on morality, we can comment on all kinds of things using that framework, but that's the mechanism, is expectation and satisfaction or dissatisfaction.
Right.
To me, it's it's been around for a long time. This is one of my favorite examples of how something very simple can move you. This is Beethoven Opus 130, the late string quartet, number 13 in B flat major, and this is the Cavatina movement. This is something our friend Sean Weil hipped to me maybe 10 years ago. I'd never heard this. I really never paid that close attention to the late Beethoven string quartets, but if you haven't checked out the late quartets, it's some of the greatest music that's ever been made.
Yeah.
It's, I think, Beethoven's best works, in my opinion. It is unbelievable. This is from
Hot take from Adam.
Hot
Beethoven
take.
late string
Beethoven
quartets
write
are
a
great.
tune. This is from the Guarneri Quartet, and the great thing about having a really Guarneri.
Sorry.
Guarneri.
Guarneri.
The great thing about having a world-class violinist as a friend is they hip you to all the best recordings of this stuff. And this
Guarneri's
is
great.
A heart-wrenching recording. There's a part that happens a few minutes in, but the setup is what it's all about. You talk about a study of how voice leading can manipulate your emotions. It's amazing. Again, expectations defying or satisfying. Here's where it starts. Doesn't get much better than that, man.
Oh, that resolution.
It doesn't get much. When the cello goes down for the
It's just that slight,
yeah, just gorgeous. All those late Beethoven string quartets are masterpieces.
Magnificent. And I mean, I'm glad you backed it up because it puts into context these magical moments, like the story of getting there.
Totally.
Like you could jump right to that moment because you know this.
Yeah.
But it still does, like the impact of leading up to that. That's what it is. It's just like in life. It's like if you have a relationship with somebody, a friend or a lover or a child or just another human. You might be traveling along in life with them, and then you have a time apart, and then you come back, and sometimes it's you pick up right where you left off, and sometimes it's like, let's get to know each other. But regardless, you've changed, they've changed, and then the journey continues on. And I think the greatest music, it's not about the groove or the style of the continent that it comes from, but it connects with people in that same way when you revisit it. It might be from hearing this live. I mean, could you imagine that you haven't heard this for a while and then you encounter that a string quartet in Vienna playing it on the street or something? Man, it would put you back to this place of like, where are you in your life now on your personal journey? Yeah. And now how does that music hit at you? Yeah. And so I think what Jan says, I know for me, like some music, when I come back to it, like it has an emotional connection. That might be me weeping tears of sadness or joy, or more likely a combination of things, because you have the connection that the composer intended and is being executed, hopefully through the performance of just taking you, the same thing as if you'd heard it for the first time, if you pay attention. But then there's also like all your encounters with that music over life. That's right. All of your life experiences, like the rich tapestry that is the human experience. Now, great music enhances that even more. It's like, oh, I mean, it's music is something that we're going to always struggle to talk about it, and we're probably being, verbose and missing the mark.
It's crass to even attempt to describe
music
what
is
we
great.
Just heard.
Hot take. Peter and Adam, you'll hear it.
It's like, let's describe technically what's going on in Miles Davis's horn. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. But I do think that this encountering with music, and for me, Beethoven, it's interesting about the late string quartets, which I've always loved, and I grew up listening to a fair amount because my mom and my dad played them.
I mean, you can listen to those for a lifetime.
Yeah, but the late string, the late piano quartets, we're gonna do a little listening party after this.
That'd be great.
Yeah, but the same thing has some of those moments where you can, as you get older, I think you can certainly identify them from a very young age, but like the depth of it after you've listened to it in the same way, and then you're like, Beethoven later. Not to say that his early stuff, like for each a season, right? But I mean, Beethoven was a storyteller. I think a musical storyteller first and foremost. So there's different techniques he uses, instrumentation, orchestration, all this. That's so fun to break down. But when it comes down to it and you're sitting in your car weeping, hearing something, like that's the culmination of the human experience. Now, some people would listen to that and be like, I'm bored.
Of course. It's all subjective, 100%. And that's
I'm bored.
Totally fine. That's great.
Yeah. But isn't there like...
But for me, I can't help but hold back tears every time I hear it, and I've heard it 1,000 times.
Are those bad people that don't... I'm starting to think it is, baby.
Let's not judge.
Well, no, let's judge a little. But there's got to be something.
Ye not judge, lest ye be... Something, there's a ye in there.
Yeah. But I'm saying like, okay, this is the ultimate privilege, I think, that I wish upon every human in the world. And that is to be able to have a musical connect. It doesn't have to be Beethoven. It doesn't have to be even something that I know, or jazz, or something that we, tend to elevate because it's our niche and it's our world and it's our experience. But to have some musical sounds in your life, be they live or recorded or even better, that you're playing, because I mean, the thing is, that was E flat. So it's like and so that's an important thing too. Like when Beethoven moves from like A or D or G with the string instruments to those flat keys, those hit differently. Like he was really a master of that.
Slow, like 3/8 or something like that.
Yeah,
it's like some kind of.
But it's like, hot take. Beethoven didn't invent the triad, but he's leaning on the triads a lot then. But then, like he knows when to leave them, like when to play with them. So he knows that a major triad played by great string players is going to hit emotionally, right?
And shout out
but not just on its own, just sitting there forever.
Shout out to this amazing quartet, the Guarneri Quartet, that are just monsters. Yeah. Peter, do you have anything you want to add to this? Anything piece of music that hits you in the gut that you kind of, it's almost inexplainable? Like we can try and we can fail, but is there anything that when you hear it every time, it's like, well, I got to skip over that if I'm in public? Yeah,
I got a couple things. I was thinking of that as we were talking. I'm going to play one in a second, and I would just add to this. I think that there is an element too that's important that maybe we don't talk about enough, of connection with things beyond music. Like you hear something at a time. A lot of people will identify this with like at a wedding or a funeral, a certain kind of music is played. I was at a funeral, unfortunately, recently, and the pianist who was was just a fine, okay pianist, okay singer. It was a Catholic funeral, which I had never been to before. I didn't realize it's basically a mass at the same time as well.
You're gonna be there for a minute.
But at a certain point, she sang Ave Maria, just very simply, just played. It was nothing spectacular, but at that moment, like that hit hard. And I've played it before at weddings and funerals. I mean, it's a weird song because it's played at many different ceremonial things, but it obviously has a huge emotional impact for a lot of people. And I think for us as so-called seasoned, sophisticated musicians, we tend to look down on that. It's like Ave Maria, that kind of stuff. We're like, oh, everyone's crying because of the Godfather. Fredo's being killed. And we're like, oh, it's in G minor. Yeah. But I mean, like, there's like real, like, we shouldn't overlook these classic emotional tunes because, like, Ave Maria, I was sitting there at the funeral. I was like, you know what? The way she's singing it, like, I don't want to hear her singing and playing it, like, just randomly. I wouldn't put it on. But for that moment, it was so much better than anything I could have added if I was sitting at the piano.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that, but like she was singing Ave Maria very simply and just playing it. And I'm looking around and the person whose funeral it was, like his loved ones, like people had spoken, his grandchildren, his children, like you got a feeling for the life of this person. And then that song was like the perfect thing. And like, so now I kind of, whenever I hear that, I'm going to probably associate it from the last time.
Yeah.
So these emotional impacts. And so the thing I'm going to play, which is Before It's Time to Say Goodbye by the Kenny Garrett Quartet.
Nice.
Songbook. Ever heard of that? We've talked about this on the pod.
Plenty.
But this is such a, it hits emotionally hard. I think it does to a lot of people just because it's in minor and the way it's a beautiful melody and it's got some of these interesting kind of storytelling resolutions, false resolutions, whatever, similar to the Beethoven, stylistically different, but very simple laid out harmony with a beautiful melody. But the first, melody is stated by Kenny Kirkland on this.
Yeah.
And so when I hear this, I'm thinking about Kenny Kirkland and, the times I got to meet him, his impact on me, not only through his music, but personally. So I couldn't say that it's just about the chords and the music. Like there's an added emotional touch every time I hear him play, but especially on this.
Yeah.
So I think that as much as the music and the inside baseball stuff is important, there's also just the timing and kind of the storyline, the musical storylines of our lives and how different things were, connected with important events and just markers in our life.
Well, Peter, add it to the playlist I'm making here, and Caleb's going to put this playlist in the chat for this.
Okay,
Let's hear a little bit of it.
Okay, are we going out on this bad boy?
Let's go out on the bad boy. That's great.
Here we go. So this is Kenny Garrett's songbook featuring Kenny from Kenny Garrett, but featuring Kenny Kirkland on piano. Half a question mark and then a resolution.